Hey everyone, it's Chelsea with Savannah in Studio, and today for our Red Moon Women's Circle, I wanted to discuss the concept of boundaries, how to set them, how to maintain boundaries, what is healthy versus unhealthy boundaries, and I'm here at a brand new labyrinth that I found in Independence, Missouri, because when I think of boundaries, whether it's boundaries between friends and family, boundaries between work and home life, boundaries within my own behavior, I tend to view them as a labyrinth. Now, just like the labyrinth that you can see behind me, I believe that boundaries are there to keep us on a path towards an outcome. And whether that is healthy or unhealthy all depends on how we're navigating the lines between our relationships. So, as with a labyrinth, we have clear-cut lines or patterns that we're supposed to follow as we meditate, winding round and round and round until we finally get toward the center. And the idea behind a labyrinth is that you're focusing on a walking meditation, helping you unwind, refocus your mind while your body is slowly moving forward, progressing toward the final outcome or the center of the labyrinth. And with boundaries, it's very similar in that you're working toward a goal or a healthy relationship between yourself and others, yourself and your environment. And if you don't have clear-cut boundaries, it can be difficult to navigate that path and find your way. Now, us as a society, we tend to struggle with setting boundaries. A lot of times, especially for women, the setting and maintaining of boundaries is frowned upon. Women are supposed to be always giving of themselves, always making time for others, putting others before themselves, putting work before themselves and family. And so it can be really difficult as a woman to be able to, one, set and establish a boundary, but two, it can be difficult to maintain that boundary once you have established it. I can tell you from my own personal experience that having, trying to figure out and navigate what a boundary is and what a boundary feels like is really difficult. There's a lot of times that I have to take a moment and really think to myself, am I setting a boundary? Am I crossing a boundary that I had previously set? Am I blurring the line of my boundary because it feels uncomfortable for me? Or is my boundary not truly there because I feel a little bit too comfortable in what's going on around me? And I can tell you that there is a lot of times that, especially in the beginning, setting and maintaining a boundary for myself felt really uncomfortable. I was taught that you always put other people's needs in front of yours, that, if you're uncomfortable but they're comfortable, at least you're doing a good thing and you're thinking of others. But the problem is that when I do that, I tend to lose any focus that I had on my own needs and what I wanted for myself. More often than not, I tended, and still do, if I'm being honest, tend to struggle with setting and maintaining boundaries around work. I've mentioned this before, that I have a deep tendency to become an alcoholic. There's not an alcoholic, a workaholic. Oh goodness, maybe there's something underlying there, but what I meant was a workaholic. But I also struggle with setting boundaries with other people, not just my children or my husband, but especially with my friends. I naturally want to give and give and give, and sometimes that can create a one-way friendship whereby my needs aren't being met in the relationship, and I'm doing all of the emotional labor for that relationship, and it can become draining and harmful to my own mental health. But because of my tendency to struggle with boundaries, it makes that giving and nurturing nature complicated many times. So, what does it look like to set a boundary? Originally, I thought it meant, hard and fast boundaries, like this is what I won't do, this is what I will do. But in all actuality, boundaries are a very gray area unless you are explicit in the way you set up your boundaries and how you're communicating with others. So, for instance, there is, I will set a boundary for myself that I will only work until 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But there's wiggle room within that boundary, because if a deadline is coming up, I will push it back. And so it makes it this gray area of, well, I really want to get this done and I need to get this done, but I also told myself that I would stop working at 5 p.m. And so the best advice that I can give you is that when you're first really starting out with setting boundaries, be clear about them, be concise, and back them up. So if you set a boundary that you won't loan money to someone, then make sure that you are holding to that not only with reminding yourself in the moment, but also maybe putting around visual reminders and saying, I won't lend money, but I will buy groceries, or I'll pay this bill if they're in a financial crisis. Or on the other hand, you set a boundary with your loved ones that you'll talk to them once a week and make time and space for them, but any more than that is too much and is overwhelming. There's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. And yeah, at the beginning it can be very uncomfortable. You may experience people pushing back against your boundaries and testing your boundaries, but it's really all about being clear with what you want, being clear with what your needs are, and following through with those expectations that you've set for yourself and others. And I can tell you right now, I still struggle on a daily basis setting and maintaining boundaries because, I like to always be busy. I like to be on the go. I like to be interacting with people. And if I'm not setting clear boundaries with myself, I can easily move myself into a state of burnout followed by anxiety and depression. And then I cut myself off from the world and I feel absolutely horrible, and it takes quite a while for me to build myself back up to a more balanced and aligned health state. And one of the advice that I always try to give my clients and loved ones is that if you're going to start setting boundaries, maybe start small and work your way up to those larger, more impactful boundaries. Start small and say that you are only going to eat out once or twice a week, or you're going to give yourself an allowance, or it doesn't even have to be about finances. It can be about the amount of energy that you devote to work or the amount of energy that you devote to other people. And just really start small and make sure that it is reasonable, that it's tangible, and that it's measurable, and that you can have that clear-cut boundary and outcome relationship, so that way you know that you're on track. And then as you start building on those boundaries and seeing the progress that you're making toward maintaining healthy boundaries, you can start working on tackling harder issues, whether it be energy given at work, around the house, within your community, finances, chores, your relationship, just whatever you need to work on so that you are keeping your energy sacred for yourself, because unlike some wells and things like that, we inevitably run out of energy, and that's not healthy or good for ourselves. You can't continuously pour from an empty cup, that saying. So you have to work on being able to set the boundaries so that you have time to refill your cup, and then you can continue to engage with the world around you without feeling like you're running on empty. Honestly, I think probably the hardest part for me is that I struggle with the word no. Not specifically, hearing it from other people, but more, saying no myself and backing it up. I'm very much you need help, I'll help you. You need support, I will support you. You need fun time, let's go do this. And so a lot of my own boundaries that I set have more to do with me saying no and being able to refill my cup and reset and regroup between interactions. The other place that I want to make sure that I touch on before we end this workshop today is that I view consent as part of boundary setting. And for me, consent is very much one of those hard line boundaries that we all have to work through and make sure that we're maintaining. there's been so much information coming up in the last 5 years about consent, particularly around harassment and assault, that for me, when it comes to consent for myself and for others, I make sure that I'm getting a clear yes. If I'm not giving a clear yes to someone else, or they are not giving me a clear yes, then I'm taking that as a no. And I liken that to the idea that you can offer someone a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, but you can't force them to drink it. And if you're forcing them to drink it, then that's assault. And if you're doing that, if you're forcing them to drink it through manipulation, abuse, and extreme measures, then it's coerced, and they're not drinking because they want to, they're drinking because they're being forced to. And so when I am working on my consent issues, I make sure that not only are other people giving me that hell yes feeling, but I make sure that I'm doing it myself. Before I agree to something, do I feel like it's a hell yes, or is it a maybe? And so that is usually my guidepost when it comes to consent and boundaries of that nature. So I know that this is a pretty heavy topic, especially if you're a woman or a parent. This can be a very difficult subject matter. And what I like to advocate for my clients is that if you're working on setting boundaries and maintaining them, always check in with yourself, always be aware of what you're feeling inside of your body, what is your mind experiencing, what emotions are coming up. And as you're setting those boundaries and working to maintain those boundaries, always check in with yourself and make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself. And, for me, that looks like taking 30 seconds, couple of minutes to meditate, placing my hands on my heart or my sacral chakra, and just feeling what energy is radiating from those locations and how I feel about what's going on around me and what situation am I potentially entering into. And that's the best advice that anyone could ever give to you, is making sure that you're checking in with yourself and that you're giving yourself that space to listen and to feel. Because whatever comes up during that check-in period is valid and is sending you messages about what's going on. It's that innate intuition that wants to talk to you and help you navigate through everything that's going on within you and around you. So, to sum up, setting boundaries can be difficult, they can be challenging, they can be uncomfortable. Maintaining boundaries can be even more so, but they are well worth it. And when you are setting boundaries and you are maintaining them, make sure that you are clear and that they are reasonable boundaries that you can see the effects of. If they're wishy-washy or super gray and unclear, you're going to constantly be in a state of unknowing with regards to where you're at with those boundaries. And finally, make sure that you're checking in with yourself whenever you are working on your boundaries, especially if you're working on consent, and just really listen to what your body and your emotions are saying to you, because they'll give you a heads up on whether or not that interaction is healthy for you or if it's not. So I hope that our workshop today on boundaries was insightful for you. Maybe it created some thoughts and emotions that you want to explore yourself. If you want someone to explore with, you can always talk to me, whether it's in the comments or connecting with me on social media. And otherwise, I want to remind you that your emotions are valid, your body is valid, you deserve to take up space and be seen and be heard. And as always, the light and the darkness within me recognizes and honors the light and the darkness within you. If you're out and about in Independence, I highly recommend you come check out this beautiful Granite Labyrinth. It is located on the World Plaza, right next to the Temple of Christ, just off of Chrysler Avenue. It's beautiful, and I can't wait to spend time walking this labyrinth today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, friends, and I'll see you next time. If you have 5 seconds, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Otherwise, I'll see you later. Bye.